Hi, this is Michael Lang with Nexul Academy. This video is part of an introductory series on JavaScript, and today we're going to talk about variables. Variables are a way to store a value in your code so that you can later use it for something else. So it's kind of like, I need to do this, I need to do this, but for this I need to know what was the value of that other thing that someone else entered. So the place to store that something else is a variable. A variable is just like a box to throw something in, and later on you might pull it out of the box and look at it. Maybe you might add something to it or take something out of it and then keep something in the box. That box is just like a place to store a value. A variable is just like a name to give that box. And so imagine every time you create a variable in JavaScript, you're just creating a box and giving it a name. So you can later on say, give me box ABC, and get the box off and see what's inside of it. Okay, so how do we go ahead and create one of these in code? Let's look over at our code now. I've created a blank HTML document. This is just boilerplate that was created with a shortcut. I did just go ahead and add a script tag. So if you're familiar with HTML already, all we have to do is add an element with the script tag. So the opening script tag and the closing script tag, with the closing tag having the slash in it, right? So anything inside of this script tag will be JavaScript code. So I'm going to go ahead and start here. I'm going to declare my first variable. To do that, I use the var keyword, var, and a space, and then whatever do I want to call it. I'm going to call it mynum. So in this case, I just created a variable. So I created a box, but I didn't put anything in it. Okay, I might want to put something in it later. I just created it and set it aside. Now I might want to create another one, myFactor, and I just want to set it to 2 right away. So this time I created another box called myFactor, and I said it's going to start with a 2 in it. Now go set it over here on the shelf. Okay, so I got 2 boxes. One is completely empty, nothing in it. The other one has a 2 in it. All right. So now, what if I want to pull that other box off, the first one, and I want to put something into it? All I have to do is start with the statement being the name of that variable. So I want to take this mynum variable off, and I want to put something into it. So I say mynum, and then I use the assignment operator, which is just an equal sign. And then on the right side of that equal sign, I put what I want to put into it. So mynum equals 6. So you can kind of read it that way. mynum equals 6. So it kind of reads well, kind of reads like what your intention is to do. So a lot of times, another thing we do with variables is sometimes we take a value from within one variable and we want to pass it into another one. We'll cover this more when we get to functions and passing one thing into a function variable or a function parameter. Now we're just going to talk about variables in general. So here, I might want to say, okay, I have a var called a, and it's got a value of 5. I have another var of b. Now later on in code, I might want to do something else here, but then later on I need to come around and say, well, b needs to be set to equal to a. Okay, so now now b and both have the value of 5. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's go ahead and move on. We'll go ahead and delete this code for now. Now, how do you name a variable? How do you pick what the right name is? If you noticed before, I used something called camel case, which means I put capital letters in the middle of the variable name. So typical camel case. This is like typically how people case their variables in a program. It's not required. This is just the convention that everyone seems to follow. It's the recommended path. So notice the first word in my variable is all lowercase. The first letter of that word is lowercase. The next word, I just make the first letter uppercase, and every word thereafter, I also make the first word uppercase. So it doesn't matter what word you use. You could have as many words in here as you want. They could all just be letters that mean nothing too. It could just be A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and they could all be lowercase. That's fine. But a lot of times people make a variable with a name that makes sense for what they're going to use it for. Okay, so in this case, that's not what this one is, but it is at least English words. So I put each word starting with a capital letter, except for the first one. Another kind of casing, you could do all title case. You could do a title case word, which means that the first letter of every word is uppercase, including the first word. So this is more common in C# and some other languages, where in JavaScript and a lot of front-end languages and even some other back-end languages, they typically do the camel case. You could also do things in all uppercase. That's fine. A lot of times people use all uppercase variables in the case where it's a constant. So it's just kind of denoting that this equals 5. So I might even have a variable called 5, and it's set to equal the number 5. And I called it 5 because it's a constant that is always 5. So you don't need to do variables just for plain numbers like that, but there might be something that is a constant in a financial calculator or something where this some number is always divided by 2.3, or maybe you got a number that's 3.14 something something to mean pi. And so you might have a variable called pi that's 3.14, etc., etc. So in those cases, you might use uppercase to mean constant, so that when people are using your variable, they see, oh, down here in code somewhere, I'm multiplying something by the variable pi. Oh, that must be a constant because it's all in uppercase. So people might use different casing of variables to denote certain kind of hidden meanings behind it or some kind of conventions, just so looking at the code, it's easier to tell what's going on or what you should do with a variable. But again, it's not set. I could later on still set pi equals 2.3. And JavaScript wouldn't complain. It's still a valid JavaScript. So casing typically is with camel case. If later on, let's say I set this variable to 5, and down here I said typical camel case equals 7. What is going to happen here? Well, we're going to have two variables, one with the value of 5 and one with the value of 7, because the casing matters. If the case is not identical, then it is not the same variable. Very common case of an error is that somebody creates a variable, they use a variable that's spelled differently or has a different case. Maybe they forgot a letter in here. JavaScript's not going to understand that, oh, you meant the same thing, so let's just do what they meant. No, JavaScript is not going to make assumptions about what you meant to do. It will do literally exactly what you tell it, nothing extra, nothing less. So if your variables don't match, it's going to think you just meant to create a new variable and put a value in there. So be very careful with your variable names. We've seen declaring variables with numbers in them. We can also do some mathematical calculations on here. I'm going to go and rename this variable just so it's easier to type. I'm just going to call it A. What if we wanted to add 4 to this variable? We could do that. We could say A equals A plus 4. Now A has a value that's 4 more than it was before. Presumably you got a bunch of code in here somewhere else doing other stuff, and later on you're adding something that maybe the user entered in a box. Maybe they say, yeah, I want to do 5 more, and you add it to whatever variable is storing that current number in a calculator, for instance. This is a kind of a trivial example, but we're just showing how do you do mathematical operations in your code. You can also do subtraction in the same way. A equals A minus 3. So now it's got 3 more than it did before that. So here it had 5, now the value is 9, and now the value is 6. Oops, that was supposed to be a comment. So we can have a running total and we can keep changing those same variables. We can also use another variable in that. We don't have to keep adding static values to the end of a variable. We could say, well, maybe you have a variable called B and its value is 2. Okay, and maybe we want to set product equal to B times A. So now we've created a new variable that is the multiplication of 2 other variables. So the multiplication symbol is a star. So now product will be, let's see, we've got 2 and 6, so this value will be 12. Division's really similar, it's just with a slash. So var C equals product divided by B. Now we just have the value back to what it was at A, so it's just back to a 6. So C has a value of 6, product has a value of 12, B has a value of 2, A has a value of 6. So we got 4 values in right there that have those different values. We also have one more little thing here, so as far as mathematical operators go. So what if we had a variable I, its value is 0, and what if we just want to increment it by 1? We could do I equals I plus 1, of course, because that's how we did the addition above. There's also a shortcut. We could just do I plus plus. Now I has the value of 1. And if I did I plus plus again, now it has the value of 2. So it just keeps going up. Conversely, there's another one that's the opposite, I minus minus, and that will just take the value down by 1. So I don't have to use the equal sign and the plus, or the equal sign and the minus in the case of I minus minus. We can just use these operators, and that just really is a shortcut. It's just so you could type fewer characters and it does the same thing. All right, so that's the really basics of variables and how you could use them in mathematical calculations. We're gonna see in another video how you can use them in strings and how you can use other data types. So look forward to another video in the future, and I'll see you then.